Right, we're live. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It was hard to know where to start with this conversation, but I just thought we might start with the recent hybrid challenge that you did yourself. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh for for that, I'd seen it posted somewhere. Somebody was asking, does anybody run a sub 3 marathon and bench press 315? And for me, I've been benching my whole life, and so I really liked the aspect that there's two things that are completely opposite. Like, right, somebody's if they're running sub 3 hours on a marathon, they're not benching 315 pounds, which I don't think I did a conversion of that. It's like 143 kilos or something.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just really like the difference there, that it's two really different aspects. And uh I've bench pressed my entire life. I started in high school, actually. I signed up for like a weightlifting class at my high school. Um, and I first bench pressed 200 pounds when I was a sophomore. So I like took to it pretty quickly. And I've been able to bench press through all my like athletic career. And, you know, I always thought it was something when somebody asks you, if you go to the gym, hey, you look like you work out. They don't say like how many pull-ups you did. They're like, how much do you bench press? What do you bench? The
Yeah.
regular gym goers like to ask that. So it was something for me just to build up really big. And 2018, I think I had my lifetime PR. I hit 365 pounds. Uh, and
Nice.
then I always liked that number because it was like 1 pound for every day of the year. And then And then I've been doing some other things, but I started running a lot more recently. This is actually like the fourth marathon I've ran in my life, but it was the first one in 11 years. Uh,
Okay.
and I just picked one. If you don't know, the marathon I ran was a downhill marathon. So we started at 7,650 feet of elevation on top of a mountain, and we ran down to the freeway that was 20 miles away, and then it was pretty flat for the last like 5, 6 miles. But it ended at 2,550 feet of elevation. So there's about 5,100 feet of decline in the marathon. It was about the decline sections were about 4% grade downhill almost the whole time, 3.8%.
How was
So it
that on the
was
knees?
so I thought my knees were gonna get rocked because out of everything on me, besides my back, my knees usually are a little rough, but they didn't hurt. They were really good. Afterwards, my quads had taken a real beating. Especially you could tell it when you get to the flat section of the course. After most of the downhill's done, that's really where it's like, oh, can you actually run now? So
All right. Well, congrats.
thank
It's
you.
an amazing achievement. So you've been on a fairly sort of significant, like looking at your Instagram, at least like a health fitness journey since um when was it, like just March 2023? Is that right? It's a relatively
Yeah,
short period of time.
I've always been like doing fitness. I kind of upped the what I was doing in like December 2022, and then really upped it in like middle of February 2023. And then finally, I didn't start actually tracking food though, which gave me the biggest changes until July
Okay.
of
Okay.
2023. Yeah.
What sort of mileage were you putting in to train for a marathon?
So for the marathon, I had recently I'd only decided after DC, after Hyrox DC, that I actually signed up for it. I'd been considering one for a little while, and I was either going to do the Eugene Marathon in Oregon or this one. And I did this one because I got family in Las Vegas. It was outside of Las Vegas. My sister was doing the half, and I was like, I'm going to go do this one. Um, but leading up to it, I'd only I'd been doing about 50 miles a week, which is what, like 80 kilometers um, each week, 50 to 55. What was interesting, I never had a single run longer than 14 miles. And that's dating back at least to January of this year. And I never had a single day of running where I totaled over 16 miles. Um,
Okay.
so I ended up running the marathon off of a lot of just good mileage, double threshold work. Just I liked I was efficient with it, but I couldn't do as much as I want because I have another job. So I'm like, okay, I have to do that.
We might get into this a little bit more a little bit later, but just based on what you just said there, with like you hadn't done more than 14 miles or 16 miles in a day, does that mean that you were doing a lot of like double days where you were doing relatively short runs but twice a day? Is that right to interpret it like that or not?
Not a lot. I did. So the 16 miles is actually, um, I had just gone out for a run. We got invited to a friend's like party at their house. Not a party, but just like, hey, you guys want to come over for dinner? And so I had to cut that run short at 11 miles. And then after we went and ate, I came back and ran another five. Uh,
Okay.
I would do I would do some things like that where like I'd go out for 8 or 9, and I'd go out for the runs with Lily in the stroller, and
Mhm.
then I'd come back and like Lauren was done doing something, so I could give Lily off to her, and then I'd go run again, or just finish the run out like 3 extra miles or something.
Okay.
Um, it was really not intentional. I'd actually just missed my long runs for like 3 different weekends, and those were the 16, 18, and 20-mile ones. And I just was like, oh, I didn't get it, didn't get to it. So,
Okay. So sporting background wise, what were you doing when you were younger?
so when I was younger, my parents always put me in a lot of different sports. So I started wrestling though when I was in 6th grade, and I wrestled all the way through college. So I wrestled NCAA Division I at Oregon State University. Had some great coaches there. Like our assistant head coach was one of the men's and women's Olympic coaches for wrestling. Our head coach was the 1980s wrestler of the decade. Had a lot of other just like really positive influences out of that. So I wrestled a lot between ages, what is that, like 11 through 22. Um, and then so I graduated college. I got my degree in civil engineering, and then I came back after a year, got a master's degree in civil engineering, and I would go work out in the wrestling room. I played a lot of other sports growing up too, like baseball, football, track and field. Uh, I think I only played soccer or football for 1 year growing up. It wasn't a lot in there. And then after college wrestling, like my mom had started doing marathons and Ironmans back at home, and she convinced me, "Hey, why don't you sign up for this marathon?" And so that was like 2011, and I went to go sign up for a marathon, and my first thought, I just got done college wrestling. I was like, I'm in really good shape. Can I run that far? I had a friend come out with me on a bike, and I was like, here, you want to just pace me for 20 miles one day? And he tried to. Um, I made it like 7.5, 8 miles in the first hour, like 7 miles in the second hour. And then the third hour came down a big hill and was only about 2 or 3 miles from getting back home. But back then we wore these like little spandex Speedo shorts for wrestling. Um, so there was no like thigh protection, and I've had like bigger thighs my whole life. So got to that point, and I was like, man, something really hurts. I'd been wearing tidy whities for this run, and I look down and I'm bleeding, like dripping blood. from my inner thighs. They'd rubbed together so badly. I had two really red like patches on each
Wow.
thigh. So I stopped at like 17 and a half miles and I just laid against a gas station wall outside of it. My buddy called someone to come pick us up, and we jumped in their truck and drove the rest of the way. And I couldn't walk for a few days. Very tender.
There must have been a few people drive past that and think, what on earth is going on?
Yeah, I don't know, when you train for your first marathon and you don't know anything like about running. Running is what we did to help our other sports for me at that time. Like it wasn't part of, hey, you race this, you run this. It was just something we did. So I did some I did three marathons. I ended up doing the marathon that year. I didn't really train that much after that experience for that first one. The second one I actually like picked up a training block and um read some running books and some Runner's World magazines. I got a running plan and I executed it pretty well. I ended up running about a 3.5 hour marathon, 3 hours, 36 minutes, I think. Um, and then I run it again the next year. I ran the same marathon three times year after year. Uh, and the last time I ran it was really slow. I didn't train for that one, and that one wrecked me. But I did a lot of triathlon and like sprint and Olympic distance triathlons as well. Um, and I have a lot of fun doing those. I can put out power on the bike, so it's pretty quick. Um, and then I think you were asking about like my sporting background, so I was just going through it. I don't know if
Mhm.
there was more to that. So then I stepped into CrossFit in December of 2013. Um, so I competed actually trying to reach like the next level with like a focus of maybe I'll get to the games. I just got to get stronger because strength is such a bias in that sport. But um, I competed, started having a lot of recurring injuries that were left over from wrestling, and like maybe just some hard pounding from the years of running at that point. And then I had some new ones develop. Like I broke my thumb trying to do a burpee wall ball. It was a dumb thing. Like I bent my thumb like all the way back. And then uh, I
That's one of
had
them
some.
things like you see on Instagram. You think that's a good idea. I'll try that,
Oh
and then
yeah, that's exactly. Except for if you're gonna do a burpee wall ball, do the burpee with the ball still on the ground. I thought I was being smart. I threw the ball. I was like, you just got to throw it really high. So I threw a med ball really high up in the air. Tried to do a burpee before it landed, and when I jumped up from the burpee to like be in the bottom of my squat to catch it, the ball had come down, missed my head, and just came down right on top of my thumb and
uh,
bent it back. I was like, oh, that sucks. Um, I had like some back injuries though, some sprains of my SI joints, and I first herniated a disc in 2014. It wasn't too bad, but um, it took a long time to recover. And then in 2018, I had nearly qualified for the CrossFit regionals. I came pretty close. I was on the first page of our region in terms of scores, and it was basically just the lift. I That year there was a workout that was like burpees over the barbell and dumbbell front squats, and it was like 10 down to one of those, and then afterwards you one rep max your squat clean,
mhm.
and I squat cleaned like 307 pounds, but it was good. It was like three or four hundredth place in our region.
Wow.
Um, and I just wasn't quite there for the other events to make up for such a bad placing. Um, and so I really started to train for 2019 because in 2018, that year, Laura and I were together, and she'd made regionals. So I got to go with her and um, walk her through it and like be her coach in the back. So that was a ton of fun. It just really made me want to get there. Um, and so in 2019, we're getting ready, and I never had any surgery in my life besides like getting my wisdom teeth pulled. Uh, but then the week before the 2019 Open started, I got an appendicitis and had to go get an appendectomy like 5 days before the Open. And so that whole season was out then. Uh, And then I might have tried to come back a little bit too soon from like a core impact, So uh I started having back pain. I went to like PT and chiropractor, and I was like doing decompression back and forth because I knew I'd had back injuries before. But then on June 30th, 2019, we did a partner workout. And right after, I just remember going into the office with Lauren and like sitting down on the ground and laying on an ab mat. And I was like, man, something really hurts. Just like it's not feeling good. And then that night I couldn't sleep. It was severe pain. I don't know if you've ever herniated or had nerve pain before, but it just
No.
feels like you're on fire. You can't get comfortable no matter what you do. Um, Turns out like 3 days later, 3 days later, after like 2 nights going to the ER both nights, I'd we got an MRI and I experienced a severe herniation of my L4, L5 disc. It herniated 13 millimeters into my spinal column and was pinching the nerve off. And I had a partial herniation or a small herniation of 5 millimeters in my L5 S1. Um, Basically from June 30th, I spent 52 days unable to walk. Uh, I just couldn't stand, couldn't walk. Like I went from one of the fittest I'd ever been into uh, standing hurt, sitting hurt, laying down hurt. The best feeling position I remember being in was kneeling. I would get down on one knee and hunch over. Like I would take showers in that position and everything. It was the only thing that relieved pressure.
It's
Um,
rough.
yeah, so I spent 52 days. So from June 30th to August 22nd, 2019. Um, and I got signed up. They made me do like a whole bunch of tests running around during that time. Like I'd have people drive me to different doctor's appointments. They tried putting like uh needles into my back, doing like that, giving you whatever the twilight experience and putting you like cortisol in your in that same spot. Didn't work. Finally, the doctor said, "Okay, I'll give you a we'll schedule you for surgery." And he's like, "Okay," but he gave me a date like 3 weeks out from the day that like he said he would schedule me. And I was like, "Why can't we do it any sooner?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks." It's like, great. So I got to spend 2 more weeks in pain because you're going on vacation.
Uh,
But he went out. That's fine. He went out. He got back. They'd scheduled me for August 21st and called me the day before and said, "Hey, we're pushing it one more day." It's like, all right. I just remember getting that call and was irritated about it. But so I had surgery, a microdiscectomy on August 22nd, 2019. I have a picture somewhere. The doctor, I don't know if they often do this, but he was so impressed by like how much he took out of my back. He took a picture of it. Like I don't know if doctors usually take pictures of things they take out of patients' back, but he took a picture of it and put it on a ruler. He took 6 centimeters of herniated disc material out of my spinal column. Um, and he like laid it out, and it was my herniation showed on the MRI. I had herniated 1.5 millimeters, 1.5 or sorry, 1.5 centimeters, 15 millimeter, 13 millimeters. It's 13 into like that was the intrusion, but he'd taken out 6 centimeters of gunk, just like just it was. I was like, wow, that's so much. And he said that to me. He's like, I took out so much of it. But after you get a microdiscectomy, I was able to walk. I had almost 75% relief of all the pain just waking up from surgery. It's the greatest experience just to like have that
yeah.
relief. I still have like neuropathy down my left leg, my left foot, left two toes of my foot, in my calf, but it I don't expect it to ever come back. It's pretty numb, but it's way better than what it was, right?
Mhm.
Anyways, after that, dramatically reduced fitness. I still ate like I was a college athlete, but I wasn't working out like one anymore. And I gained weight. Um, and so I had surgery in August of 2019, and I helped Lauren trained basically from that point, almost like a week or two later. I think she was doing her first Hyrox sim because Hyrox Miami was in October 2019. I was just able to freshly walk, and I was at that venue with her taking pictures and videos, like walking all around, getting all around in Miami. And basically, it was that point I went from like training partner to more of a helpful guide. I wasn't quite her coach at that point.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And so up to that point, you hadn't had any coaching experience really, like with anyone else or anything like
Uh,
that?
yeah. So through that, we in college when we wrestled, I had to coach wrestling camps.
Okay.
So I coached like high school wrestling. We volunteered to go to the high schools and like roll on the mat with them. So I did that for through college. So we did that every year. It was 4 or 5 years. And then actually when I started doing the marathons and triathlons, I was looking up all the information because I started training my mom and my dad with trying to do their own triathlon. So I was reading like as much as I could figure out about it. There's like one book, it was 24 weeks, I think, to your best Ironman. And was able to get both my mom and dad to like a 12-hour Ironman. So it's like
Nice.
they were 45 to 50 years old at that time, 50-ish. Yeah, they're 50. She's 50, 57 now. So
Awesome. Okay. All right. So you sort of touched on that first Hyrox with Lauren. Did your like the coaching of Lauren sort of just like it's just something that progressively started to happen a bit more and more?
yeah, it really started out where I kind of just we were training partners. We did very high volume CrossFit programming. It was called Hyperfit. I really like that name. And I learned a lot from like that type of style. And then in addition to the program, we'd run together like 3 to 5 mile loop, and I'd run with her almost every day. She ran every day. Like we did a very high volume CrossFit program that was meant for like games athletes, and she ran 3 to 5 miles every single day. And I just did it whenever I could. Um, and then once I had my surgery, it was more about giving her workouts. So I would give her just additional workouts, additional skill work and stuff. And it was in addition to what she was already doing. Oh, and I remember I gave her one workout she'd never forgive me for. This was back in 2019. It was a 2K row for time, but every 2 minutes she would have to get off and perform one round of DT. And if you don't know what the workout DT is, it's 12 deadlifts, 9 hang power cleans, and 6 shoulder to overhead at 155 pounds for men and 105 pounds for women. Now, I thought she could uh, do a round of DT in like 45 seconds. Her DT time was insane. It was like 3 minutes something for 5 rounds of it. So I was like, well, that means she'll get about a little bit more than a minute of rowing each interval. So it'll take 8 intervals. She'll be done like 16 minutes in. I was like, yeah, no worries. She'll be great. And it ended up taking a little bit longer than that. And she's like, if you weren't hurt, you'd be doing this right now. I remember. And then she's like, as soon as you're able to, you're gonna do this. And I don't know if I've ever done it. I think I did it, but I lowered the weight more recently. But yeah, so I kind of moved into the role of like I would help her out during simulations. I'd give her workouts. She would get other workouts, but really um, didn't go to like actually full-time coaching her until uh, after she gave birth. That's when like she was like, maybe I should structure it a little bit more. And we changed from there.
Which is for people that don't know, that's relatively recently. Like that is how long we're looking at now.
So
Well, how old's Lily?
Lily is almost 2 years old. She's 21 months. Uh, so I started, I think it was November of 2022 is when like our first week of me giving her a program and doing that started.
Okay. And what was Lauren doing for coaching prior to that? Was it just her own stuff and a bit of
Yeah,
help from you? Or?
it was, yeah, we would, we'd create workouts, we'd look at workouts. I'd send her. workouts that I saw that looked good. She'd have her own, and then she would just run. Like, and it was never hard running. It was always just long, easy runs for 7 days a week, and then uh, CrossFit and other strength, and then uh, really general fitness.
Okay. Okay. Um, how is it being coached to your wife? Is it tough at times when you give her a 2K row with DTs and things?
Yeah, so I mean I make mistakes and she corrects me on things like that. But it's fun. She she'll question everything I give her though. So it's really helped me grow as a coach. I did coach in a CrossFit and boot camp gym for about 5 years too. So I like had that experience with hands-on. And I think our journey has been like my journey as a coach is like 12 years at this point. But um, with Lauren, she will always ask, she she asked me, why is she doing something? It has to have a purpose and I have to explain it. If I ever give the answer just like, oh, it's just to make you mentally tougher or because I liked it or because I wrote it, like, just listen to me. If I, it's no, that doesn't work out. It's that workout won't be done if that's the reason for it being in the program. So it's really challenged me as a coach and really helped me to see the most growth I've had as a coach because of her. Not only like understanding that coach athlete relationship and like really the compassion and like connection you have to have as a coach to your athlete. But it really makes me focus and have intention in everything that I program. Because I know I'm going to be asked, why am I doing this? And I mean, I've scrapped full 8 week training progressions that I've made and programs because I couldn't adequately answer the question of why this progression and what is its purpose. So I'll spend hours doing things, and sometimes I just get rid of some of them, or I go back and look after I've written it out, and I'm like, nope, that doesn't fit. Can't do that. So having her as my athlete really has helped me as hopefully as much as I've helped her. And that relationship, I think our biggest sticking point is that I'm pretty data driven, and I like feedback on like how'd this workout go? What was your time here? Or what'd you do this? And Lauren doesn't time her workout. She doesn't log her results. So I don't have that. It's not the same. It's a lot by feel versus actual like written down times and stuff.
Okay.
But I think I've gotten pretty good at guessing her times. Remember one workout I came within like 3 seconds of what I thought she was going to do. She finished in. I was like, good job.
um, the is that like a trait like the questioning? Why they're doing something. Is that a trait that's you've noticed just in Lauren, or is it like I know you've worked with like a few like top athletes? Is that a common thing between them? Would you say?
Yeah, they absolutely. I mean, I work with Lauren Griffith and JK, obviously, and my wife, Lauren, and they they definitely do not just blindly listen to me. And I would never expect them to. They question their top end athletes, they know their body, they know what's like best for them. They're looking for like help and guidance in that way. And like the best program for an athlete is the one they're most adaptable to, the one that's going to be most consistently followed, all that. So in order for that to happen, I need and they need to provide, proper feedback. They need to have input on what they're doing and how they're feeling because they know their bodies better than I do. They know their bodies like what's coming for them. So I need them and I want them to always question me. I want them to be involved. I have weekly calls with them to discuss their schedules to make sure like how we fit their training in. I asked them how previous loads affected them, where they were fatigued at, like what was the biggest issue. We go into wall balls, and there's a lot of different failure mechanisms in just a wall ball alone. Is it mentally I just couldn't sustain moving anymore, or oh, my shoulders gave out, or I couldn't stay upright in my core, or my legs were just dead. But it's not just, okay, I stopped at 50 reps. It's, hey, this failed on me, or my hips, I couldn't squat anymore. So when you do that, they know the answer to that, and I just need feedback from them. I can usually tell them like how I expect they'll feel at a certain part of the week or on certain days based on the load I've given, but I'm not gonna, they know much more. And the group I have, the three of them, um, they're all what I would consider extremely coachable, but not just blind following. Absolutely not. They're willing to trust you as long as you can demonstrate that you deserve it. And for me as a coach, it's important that I follow through on the commitments that I make to them. So like I listen to them, I adapt it with them, and I really never try to put any undue pressure on like a certain workout or telling them to meet a certain time. Uh, and like my responsibility to them is that I make sure I'm constantly trying to learn new things so that I can serve them better. Because I mean, I have goals too as a coach, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
when I was in college wrestling, our coaches always told us, we want 10 falls. And there in wrestling, there's 10 weight classes, and they wanted 10 falls. They wanted a pin in every single match at the national championships. They wanted 10 guys and like that's really high aspirations, right? That's never going to happen. But um, so I have goals, and my goals as a coach are to just make sure that they get to the start line with the best fitness we could develop, and that they know how to utilize that, and that they're healthy and uninjured, and they have a strategy, and that I'm not asking them to do anything they're not capable of. And that's different for each of them. But yeah, they're as far as back to your question, I think I put a little ways off, but they don't blindly listen to me. But they all have very good traits, and I expect they question me, and they do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, personally, like obviously, I'm not like them as an athlete, but like as a data guy and an analytical guy, like I don't like doing workouts unless I know like the reason
Yeah.
for it. And I suspect you're the same, right? I can imagine you would appreciate that in reality, you know.
Yeah, I want to know why I'm doing something and what's the purpose of this workout. Like there's got to be a reason for it, and that reason can't just be like, oh, it looked pretty, or this person did it on Instagram, so I want to do it too. Like that's
Yeah.
not really the best way to train, right? So
How about other, like you talked about, like coachable and the questioning? Are there any other traits that you've noticed between them in particular, or not?
uh let's see. Yes, they I mean, they all really they know themselves, right? Like they know what they're capable of. They know that uh their bodies, how they react to certain stimuluses, all those things. They're all really dialed in. I'd say each one of them like is there, and they have like a drive and a passion, and that varies between each of them, right? Like, um, but they mentally are ready to attack anything too, and they don't balk at the idea of doing work or more work. It's not really that. It's just intention in the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, Lauren has been, an amazing athlete for a long time, and you touched on she never really went that fast with her running, and she was like, slow runs and CrossFit. Um, okay, I guess my question is, how has her training evolved over time, if it has? And I know when I spoke to Lauren almost a year ago now, she sort of touched on that shortly before the Manchester World Championships, she'd been doing a little bit more like faster paced sort of threshold tempo work, I think it was, whereas previously it had all been a lot of long, slow runs. Like a very high proportion of her training had been long, slow runs. Can you talk about that? How things have evolved?
yeah, so I know her training has evolved even before CrossFit. Like she would go out on long runs, but um, and then she got into CrossFit and never gave up the running. It didn't go as long. Like she wasn't doing 10 and 7 miles anymore, but she was doing 3 to 5 all the time. But before she gave birth, the first, well, I mean, we could start 2018-ish. She loves running. And prior to me taking over coaching for her, there were no fast runs. They were actually exceptionally slow, like 10 to 11 minutes per mile. And for an elite athlete, like going and running 10 to 11 minutes per mile, which is like 6:15 to 6:45 per kilometer. It's, they're almost walking, right? So, but she'd run 5 to 7 miles every single morning. And then we would address all of our other energy system needs in our GPP workouts, our strength and our applied strength sessions. The workouts themselves were taken at like threshold pace for a lot of different modalities and range of motions, but it was not really ever running. The increase in intensity that you referred to came like when I took over the coaching role, which was, what's that? We said November 2022. It was really like end of November, so we call it December. It was like a month and a half before Maastricht last year, 2023. And uh, we began our double threshold journey. Uh, at the first, at first, the only change we made was that in her runs twice a week, instead of just the long, slow runs, we were going to do lactic threshold interval paces with fixed rest instead of the easy zone 2 runs. That was the only difference. And then on those same days, because we were doing double threshold, she added a machine threshold. So we would do like a very similar workout on the skier or the rower the afternoon of those same days. And really nothing else changed except that structure for a while. So she still gets a ton of higher intensity work through our GPP, some anaerobic stuff through strength and applied strength workouts. Like we were working the energy system still, but now we had this double threshold base that we eventually built off of. Really, the only change in intensity we made was that run, those 2 runs each week.
Sorry, that was 2 runs. That's 2 double threshold days in a week, or just one at that time?
Yep. So we did 2. So in the week, it would be like Monday, Thursday, she would take, instead of a long, slow run, it would just become a threshold run on the treadmill on like both those days. And then afternoon of both those days, it would be a machine threshold, like on the rower on Monday and the skier on Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everything else like largely remained the same though, like
Yeah.
the GP. Yeah.
The other programming stayed the same. It would be even those days, the program would stay the same. So we'd still do the other workouts on those days. It's just we'd added intensity to the runs for the first time.
Okay. Um, and has it progressed further since then, or is that largely what you've been?
Yeah. I mean, now it's we do like double threshold stuff. So we'll do like still double threshold days, with the running and the machines and the running the machines, and we'll add like an X workout, maybe an extra machine threshold on like a third day. And that's really the base structure we build off of is building it around the running instead of really around the workouts as much now.
Okay. I saw Lauren, I think it was on Lauren's Instagram, where you were doing the blood lactate testing as well. Is that a relatively recent thing, and have you found that useful?
Yeah, so I mean, we guessed originally on her paces. Like we didn't have the meter. I didn't know you could actually go buy one. So when we first started threshold training, we guessed and we erred on the side of slower. Um, and we completely guessed. We're like, okay. She's like, I feel like this pace I could hold for an hour, and it was like 8.4 or 8.5 miles per hour. And then, I built her up. I think she was doing like 8.7 at some by Worlds last year on her threshold paces. And we have it set on the treadmill. We do everything on the exact same treadmill in the exact same position at the same incline so that it like doesn't change. And then in December of last year, so we'd been coaching her for a year at that point, I went and bought a blood lactate threshold meter. Um, and I learned on myself how to actually do it. And then I was like, here, let's test your threshold, see where you're actually at. And once we tested it, we realized like, oh, it's almost a mile per hour faster than what you've been running. And so in before Vienna this year, we upped her pace by almost 1 mile per hour now. And then we were like, oh, that's great. So I read more about it. That's me as a coach continually getting educated. Because like I said before, I don't have a running background. Running was always what we used for our sport. We used running for athletics. We never like specified running. And so I don't know a lot about it, but I've been reading everything I can. I take like online certifications about it. I just try to like revamp and make sure I'm always understanding and grow myself so I can help grow her. And so I read about blood lactate thresholds, and um, we just recently did it again because like, you should do it after every training block, or just to see how that training block affected it. And if it was effective, it'll move, like up and to the right or over to the right on your graph when you graph it. And the way we do it was we just compare it directly to the treadmill we're going to use for every single threshold workout so
Mhm.
that we know we're hitting the exact right pace. Yeah.
Uh, Two questions. So you did it again recently. Has it changed since Vienna, where she set the world record?
Yeah, it went up a little bit again. So,
Okay.
but it's starting to get up into those paces where I don't know if she's like not scared to do them, but it's like, oh, that's getting a little faster. That's getting a little faster. And so when it does that, you have those little things like when you look down at the treadmill and you see a double digit on it, you're like, ooh, that's fast. I don't know if I can hold that for that long. But um, I mean, we did the blood lactate testing, and then like just this last weekend, she went and ran a 15-kilometer race, and her pace for an hour, 56 minutes is what she finished in. But if you extrapolate it to an hour, was just like almost exactly what we tested for anyway. So
Okay.
it was like, oh, it came out right, because
Proven out. Yeah.
yeah, if your threshold's supposed to be your 1 hour pace, you don't often get to race that 1 hour time domain, and it was perfect.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
It's
Uh, how about, are you doing that blood testing non on like on the ergs as well? Like, because you said two of the threshold sessions are ergs or ski. Do you apply it to that? Is it different or?
No, I think you could, but because it's not full body like like they're full body, but it's not the same way as running. It'd be difficult to actually find those paces for us, and I don't know what that calculation is yet. So I'd like to do that. We might experiment with some things like that after Worlds. But during this block right here, we're not gonna impede any training to be able to get those yet. So really those are based off of feel.
Okay.
Make it feel like she's been doing threshold long enough now that it's like make the machines feel like the runs do. You know
Mm-hmm.
what that zone is, you know what that pace is, so make it match. Yeah.
Know what your breathing's like? Would you focus on the breathing, like how heavy your breathing is at that point?
Um, I mean, it's hard. Like your heart rate's not going to get to the same rate that it would running as you would on as you are going to on the machines. Um, they're breathing like that could be, but it's really just because that fluctuates every day too. So we have like what we've guessed to be their pace. But on the machines, I actually do a little bit faster as well because our thresholds are between like a minute and a half, 2 minutes to 10 minutes. And so really on the machines, I'm like, you've done a 10K on this machine before. Let's use that pace, that
Mhm.
average pace for a 10 kilometer, because that'll get us in the range. And it's like a 40-minute pace, 45-minute pace, but it's there. So that's what we use for the machine thresholds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Sorry, I like to geek out on this stuff,
Yeah,
but
that's fine. I do too. So,
are they
oh
half
no,
hour?
you froze. Okay, there you go.
Oh, right. Are they like about half hour? The threshold sessions, are you like, is it around half hour's work or more or less?
Yeah, it's different for each one. I usually range them anywhere from the running ones from like 2 to 10 or 2 to 15 minutes, and then um, just have them do however many sets. So it could be like 2 sets of 15 or 15 sets of two or um, whatever it is like their active time. I just have a goal for based on whatever mileage they're running that week, like the percentage of threshold work to their total estimated mileage. So
Okay.
I make sure it fits in that range.
What is a mileage now in a, around now, this sort of stage of the season? What sort of mileage is she doing every week?
Uh, you might have to ask her that. She'd answer because she does different. Like the mileage is under for Lauren, mileage is under her control. Like so, she'll do more or less warm ups, more or less on the long runs that I give her or anything. So she really does adapt the program to herself. Uh, Probably she's doing like over 55 miles a week, over 60 miles a week, in that range. So
Okay.
and that's actually Lauren Griffith does about that range too, and like that 55-ish. And JK, like that was one of the things when I first started working with him, we upped his mileage. So we're getting him to that range still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's still, so that's, I mean, still a lot of long, slow stuff in there as part of that mileage because, like, you're doing two threshold sessions that might last half an hour, but otherwise, it's fairly slow stuff, is it?
Yep. Otherwise, outside of those two things, it's they run 6 days a week. And so in those remaining 4 days, they're capturing about 80% of their mileage, 85% of their mileage in those 4 days.
And is Lauren still doing that, like, very slow, like whatever you said it was, 6:15, 6:30
Oh
minutes per
yeah,
kilometer?
she'll show me her like her Garmin afterwards. She's like, "Oh, I ran that one like 11 minutes per mile." And we live in Salt Lake City, and there's mountains here and there's hill, and we live nearby some like hills. So she'll go run out, and and the runs out are a little bit slower than the runs back, but she'll even stop during her runs to like just to take a picture of something or a video of something, or she sees something and she'll do that. So it's very yeah, they're very, it's not high intensity running. And people get surprised by that. Like I know people are, oh, you're just training to run slow, but you got to run slow to run fast. And it really helps with like the impact and everything.
Um, uh, as an analytical guy, I'm guessing she's not even getting to zone two at that pace for Lauren. Does that bother you?
Maybe, yeah, very low zone two if she is. All right, her heart rate, she's really in control of like her heart rate. So there's it's pretty low, but yeah, probably I actually don't remember off the top of my head what it was. I'm sure I have it written down somewhere for her longer, slower runs that she's shown. But I mean, it gets up. It's like long outdoor, an hour of just like going out and cruising.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, nice. Um, my perception from the outside of your training, which admittedly is just from the outside, is that like Lauren doesn't quite train so specifically for Hyrox, you know, doing all the Hyrox movements, Hyrox workouts as others might do. It's a little bit more GPP, CrossFit type workouts. Is that a fair assumption? And if so, do you feel like it does carry over well to Hyrox, everything you're doing?
Yeah, so our main goal is general overall fitness. So we really work on like the energy systems. We try to hit specific ones for each workout. I've looked like I try to rack my brain. I really try to order books that I hear about or things. Like I went and bought the Science of Running, the Jack Daniels formula. Alberto Salazar wrote something. Like I try to just gather as much information as I could, but the endurance training plans that I've seen, I haven't found that anything that teaches you how to use your ATP, then use your oxidative patch while replenishing that ATP, to use it again in short bursts, like in an hour workout, right? So everything is just like it almost goes straight to oxidative path. And CrossFit has gone through this where we can perform short, highly anaerobic efforts repeatedly during a longer time domain workout. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we do CrossFit workouts. We do CrossFit workouts that are 45 minutes to an hour long too. Um, so Hyrox requires you to be basically it's a aerobic workout, so you're in an oxidative state. Hyrox requires you to use your ATP specifically at certain points, and so we need to know when to apply like an ATP effort versus a glycotic effort versus like just sitting in your oxidative pathway, like for that whole thing. And so some of the things I found, like triathlon training workouts, sometimes come close to being able to like mimic that, especially like their brick workouts. Uh, but the original CrossFit methodologies address those needs pretty well. Uh, and so we still use those. And me personally, I'm a like I go out and try to get certifications and like just everything. Whether I like to support the community too. So if I see anybody's like hosting a class or like selling a book or something, I'll go look at it and buy it. And like I like to support them that way too. But I want to hear their opinions. And uh but me as a coach, the things I've gotten, like I went and got my level 1 certification, and then like 4 years later got my level 2 certification while I was coaching. And then uh early last year, I got my level 3 CrossFit certification, so I can be a certified CrossFit coach or certified CrossFit trainer, CCFT. And I have my like USAW weightlifting, sports performance coach. So like I have things in that, but I've taken like CrossFit's online courses. I've taken a few other like online courses. I've taken like form running, just to be able to like prepare. But I think in terms of like the training, it's come back, and CrossFit's pretty broad. I mean, I just like the idea of the original CrossFit, not so much where it's been going where it's highly strength focused and not like the publicization of it, where it's a lot of more media, but it's the original intent of it that Greg Glassman wrote, where it's broad time domains and modalities, right? And our GPP, when we talk about that, just in case any of your listeners want, that stands for General Physical Preparedness. Um, and it's just an artifact from our CrossFit days, but we do a multitude of movements. And we don't do the same like CrossFit movements. We eliminate the very high skill gymnastics and the heavy technique based lifts. Like I'm not in our workouts, I'm not having our athletes or any athletes do like heavy snatch lifts or snatch ladders, or we will do power snatches or overhead squats at pretty lightweight just because you can get explosive that way. Um, but the movements in Hyrox, I think, are really good tests of fitness, but not necessarily the best movements to get you the most fit. So if you're repeating those Hyrox movements over and over again, you're missing some very key movement patterns and you're leaving a lot of fitness on the table. So we do a whole bunch. But if you're prepared in like a more general sense of fitness, rather than very specific training, um, when when something goes wrong in your race, you'll be a lot more prepared to adapt to it because you're not fixed on one modality.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Um, let's talk about JK. So
All
you,
right.
you relatively recently started working with him, and in Cologne in the past weekend, he put in an amazing performance to win the last chance qualifier. Um, you touched on you've increased his mileage, his running mileage. Is that like the main change that you made in that time? Like, do you feel like there was anything in particular that led to that performance?
I mean, actually going into it, I thought, and I talked to him about it, like I thought he was going to run about a mid 55. I thought that's what it would take to win, low to mid 55, and he came out with a low 54. And if you go back and watch the race, he was right on pace for what him and I had talked about, uh, basically up to the rower. And then he was just like, I'm feeling good. I'm just gonna take it and go. And that's what he did, right? Um, so his focus in terms of him, in terms of his improvement, his focus and mindset are really, I think what helped. We've not had a ton of time together, basically just enough to go through a single cycle and a single volume build. Um, and we worked together to figure out how to best use the fitness he has, like what he had coming in, and how to best use that to maximize his performance. Um, and then I do an analysis on like all his past races and everything. And I just try to figure out where the lowest hanging fruit was that we could recoup some time from. Uh, and so just being able to study his races, could find that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard like people talk before how analytical you are, and when I met with Lauren Griffith in Washington, she sort of said that, and Dylan said like you're very analytical. I think you'd watched her race already like 3 times. You look at the data. What are you looking for in those moments? Is it just like yeah, anything that's not obvious maybe that you're looking for?
So yeah, I mean, so I rewatch like all the major races every time I run on the treadmill. And like I run like 50 miles a week still, not like the last 2 weeks because of the marathon, but like I'll get back up to that. And so I spend a lot of time doing that. And then outside of that, I'll pull up the races on my computer here and look at them. It really helps me think, and I just look for areas where they could maybe push, and then some technique improvements. I look for where I see fatigue in them and how I could address that in their program. So if I see them fatiguing at certain points of the race, I make a note of it and I try to say, here we need to work on this transition, this type of movement. Um, I take splits at different points than the ones that Hyrox provides on their website, because I just want to know where, uh, consistently, where things start and end. And I've just found through, I mean, we've been doing Hyrox 4.5 years now, and I used to analyze Lauren's races every time, right? Before there were all the splits and the videos on it, I just had videos from my phone. So I just found certain areas I like to know the data on over other areas that were actually provided. And every time I watch a single athlete. So I'll focus, and it might not be the one that's on screen, but I'll focus on a single athlete every time I watch a race. And I'll focus on their competitors, each watch like as closely as I watch my own athletes. I try to understand what the competitors are doing. What I try to understand, like what I would tell their competitors if I was coaching that person. It's almost like I liken it to like I play chess against myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if I'm on the other side of the board, what's the best move for me to make? and then go back to the other side. Okay, how do I counter that using my skill set and stuff? And then I try to provide that insight that I can gain from that to my own athletes to be like, okay, hey, look, you can pressure this person here or pressure or do that here. Um, and like every single person's beatable. And everyone races a little bit different each race. So that's why you got to watch them all because they might be trying something new and it's not any different. There's nothing different from their other races except for like this station or this run, they're doing something different. And so, um, I mean, I have it on my computer. I have a file on every single Elite 15 athlete from like the last 3 years, where I've taken their races and I watch from their point of view, like and how they race and what they're doing and what I would do as their coach. And then more recently, I have right now the top 10 Elite 15 men. I have like a file on, and since I only recently started to analyze the men, uh, if like I would focus on them the same way that I'd focus on the women. And I've noticed a little bit different things about the races. Like you can talk about the men's versus the women's race, but if I could get a viewpoint focusing on a single athlete for every single race, I'd be very happy because I'd follow that one person the whole race. That's what I look for. I just try to see um, a few different things. Uh, Yeah, and then how that compares to their past races. And I always use like a rolling, the what really matters is just how you perform the last 4 or 5 races, not really the whole career, right? And that depends for some athletes. They don't have a full career. They don't have 20 races under their belt. So you're not like ignoring some, but the more recent races, especially, are just the ones that I look at. Uh, yeah. And
Okay.
as far as like what I've seen, the difference between the men and women is the men almost are how do I put this? It's a brute force race. It's just a war of attrition. There's not like the finesse of the women's race in it. So it's really just they're out there in a slugfest versus I mean, if you were looking at like a boxing match or an MMA fight, it would be, the lighter guys that are moving and they're not going to have that knockout punch, but they got a lot of strategy and skill would be the women's race, while the heavier like haymaker throwing heavyweights are the men's race where they're just trying to really pound on each other.
Yeah, yeah. I remember thinking that, especially at the Vienna race when I was there, and like from the start, the guys went like past me from that first 100 meters was like so fast. I couldn't believe it. It was like they weren't ready for it. weren't going to do a Hyrox. It was like a 100 meter sprint, but yeah, it was
Yeah. It was
crazy. Yeah,
who's gonna hang on, right? It was like
yeah, yeah,
you're gonna come with us or you're gonna fall too far behind. Like, and that was just I've seen those races and the guys do that. The guys do that more often than the women do. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, does that like when you? I mean, I guess this all plays into race tactics when you're talking with athletes about how to approach the race, and you sort of said with JK, he was exactly where you wanted him to be, and all that sort of stuff. Presumably, you talk about tactics and pacing, um, and if so, like Lauren often seems to go out fast as well. Do you ever wish you wouldn't go out so fast? Or is that something that you're trying to encourage or
she's
not?
she's one of the most experienced athletes. I trust whatever tactic she's gonna employ. Uh
Okay.
when when they're out there and I'm watching them, my mind during their races is just flooded with nervous, anxious anxiety. Like, I pull up the live streams on our big TV in our living room, and then I'll have my computer off to the side, and I'm getting sweaty and I'm shaking, and I know I know at that point that I've done all I can for them. But always what goes through my head is like the things I didn't do. What if I should have done this instead of that? Or I question if I missed something. Like I always just am thinking that. So yeah, I mean, did you ask about mindset? Was that what you said? Is that?
Uh, well, I was going to get to that, to be honest.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
But
I blanked on the question.
well, it's just like the race tactics and what you discuss from a tactics perspective with the athletes. Is it like you're leaving it down to them to pace it? But then I guess mindset comes into that, like
Yeah,
how
so
should they?
like race tactics, I'm sorry, like they each have one big race coming up still, so I'm not gonna reveal it for them. If they want to share it, if you talk to them, if they want to share it, it's fine. But like they trust me to talk to me about that stuff, so I'm not gonna
Mhm.
betray their strategies or anything. Like I don't even talk between them, like because I coach two women in the Elite 15, like my wife Lauren and Lauren Griffith, and I won't even talk to each of them about each other's race or
Yeah.
anything, just because I want them to be able to trust me to talk about it. And so I built trust with them, and it relies on being able to be honest, on them being able to be honest with me and me being able to be honest with them. So as far as tactics, we just have one more race to get through.
Okay.
It's always
What
the
what
mindset
about
there.
what about mindset though? In like I talk with a lot of people in here about where their mind goes in a race and when things are getting tough. Do you speak with them about that? Do you try and advise them on that, or is that something that you leave down to them?
Yeah, I try to make sure that they've at least gone through the race in their head before the race happens. Um, so that's just like, hey, during this run, do your like you're in the race, or I'll tell them to rewatch this race and go read it. And they're all different in like how they approach it too. Like with Lauren Griffith, I've recommended like, hey, you should go read this book about athletic mindsets. And then like with JK, like um, I'll just go off. I believe in like sports psychology and the techniques like I've learned. So when I was wrestling in university, we were required to take like these various life skill improvement seminars once a month. And a few of them were sports psychology related, and I really latched onto those. So we'll do like some goal setting techniques and make sure we get measurable, defined goals out of each of them, and I'll like drill down until I can get that. And then I'll challenge them on those goals like each week too as we're progressing. I got a big collection of like motivational quotes and stories. So like our wrestling room was we had 20, 30 different quotes all around the room. Like one of my favorites I just remember is you know, uh, preparation, luck is the time when preparation and opportunity meet. And
Mhm.
so, my dad actually had that in his bedroom from at my grandparents' house when he was young. There was like a picture of a wrestler, and it was wrestling is a matter of luck. The harder you work, the luckier you get. Like, and so it's just like those type of things. And so I just want them when they're in the race, it's an hour long, but to remain like mentally engaged. It's hard to do that sometimes. Like, especially if you're out, if you run a marathon, you're 3, 4 hours of like you're gonna think of other things and then be like, ooh, my pace, right? And
Mhm.
so it's kind of hard to stay focused for the whole duration of the race, but getting to that point and making sure they're mentally ready is a big part of it. Like we have to after a big race, like JK's race this last weekend, we mentally deload as much as we physically deload after a race like that because he has to like there's so much energy that was built up in him. There's so much of just his mental state that we have to like move on with it, right? And you can't just like flush that out and reset. So you need to like let him dissipate that energy. And so and like I said, like we have motivational quotes and stories. And actually, one of my favorite stories was we had Dick Beardsley come talk to us one time. He's the guy that was in a really close battle with the Boston Marathon with Alberto Salazar in like 1982, I think. And during the last like little turn, he was cut off by a motor car when he was racing. Um, and uh, it was just like at one of the last turns, and then he was passed by Salazar, and he ends up in second place in the Boston Marathon. And then he experienced an injury. He was out on a run. He got hit by a bus, and he got addicted to pain pills when he was in the hospital recovering from that. It's a long story, but it's a story of like he had addiction and misfortune and legal trouble, and like he overcomes all this stuff. And I like the idea of thinking about overcoming things. That's where I was going with that. But if you want to read the story of Dick Beardsley, you should go listen to that. That was one of my favorite like life skill improvement seminars I'd gone to.
Okay. Okay. Um, I just want to ask you your. I mean, obviously, you've got a vested interest in both the elite races this year, the men's and the women's. We won't talk about the women's. I won't ask you for predictions on that side, but on the men's side, how do you think it's shaping up?
Yeah. Um, I mean, to be the champ, you have to beat the champ, and Hunter's looking good. Uh, right. But we've only seen him one time this year.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, he runs his own sims, I'm sure, but that's got to come back at some point. Um, I think there are four guys that can pressure him. And if he races the way he did in Manchester last year, where um, he makes a mistake or he cramps up, he'll get caught. There's no, he doesn't have that buffer that he had last year. Uh, I think I said this before, like especially just watching him race. Like I was there in Leipzig when Toby beat him off the sleds and never gave him the lead again, right? I was there in Chicago when Kent beat him just by running the first part of the race faster than him. And I really think with Hunter, he wants to go out and as far as the men race, you got the whole men's field chasing, but uh, if you get a group of guys, and it might have to be like the whole field just decide, we're going to put the pressure on him. But if you get a group of guys that can make him race instead of making him think about a time trial, um, he I don't know, maybe, but you put the pressure on him, why not try it? And he might break, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he, we've never seen him win a race where he's leading after the burpees. Um, or
Not
sorry, we've never
leading
seen
after.
him,
Yeah.
we never, where he's not leading after the burpees, right? So what happens if you have two or three guys that are putting the pressure on him and he's not going to be hitting the splits he wants, going for a world record or something? He's not going to hit the splits he wants because you got to realize it's a race and the time doesn't matter. It's only where you place. It doesn't matter if you go 45 minutes or 70 minutes. It's where you place in that race, right? So if a couple of guys can pressure him through the burpees, make him overextend a little, it could be a really good men's race that really shakes it up and could come down to a wall ball off.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that would just be very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. You said four guys. Uh, is that, well, Kent, Rylan, JK, and Alex?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan maybe too, but Dylan's more of a
Yeah.
pacer. I don't think he'll take it out at the pace, but he could clean up anybody that does overexert a little. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's just, and it's the unfortunate thing is you need like some of these guys rely on having a good day instead of like consistently just being at the top. I'd say Alex doesn't. Alex, I listened to him on a podcast recently, and he talked about how I'm always fit. I don't cycle through up and down. Like I'm always fit. And I love that like you don't have to be. You have a really high fitness. And if you need to, like you work on some specific skills 2 or 3 weeks out if you need to, but otherwise it's just being really fit all the time.
Yeah.
I love the way he talked about that. And I think that's why he's the most consistent racer, is because of that mentality.
I remember when I first met Alex in Manchester before he tried doubles with Tiago, and I said to him, "You feeling good?" And he was just like, "Always." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It
and he,
really pays off, I think. And yeah, he's able to do those double days and those just because of what he's built over the years. I mean, Alex is of the people here now. He might be the only one that's been here longer than I have, longer than Lauren has. He was in how do you say Oberhausen? Is that where the first
Yeah.
world championships in 2019, he was second place there. Uh,
Mhm.
and he's been in the sport since its inception.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with those guys you said, and I would include Dylan in that list as well. I think the winners of the majors that we've seen so far this year, like you said, that they might not always consistently be doing it, but they've shown that they can on their day they can do it. And
Yeah. If they finesse a race and strategize running it a little bit more, like if the men try to run a race the same way the women do, I think they'd realize like it's not about the haymakers, it's the body shots and the quick punches. Like that's what's gonna wear these guys down. And somebody could get, a knockout blow, but really it's very much uh if they have a good strategy and make some moves at the right time, they could come out on top.
all right, awesome. All right, well, thank you for this. This has been brilliant. Uh, is there anything else you want to talk about? And then also, like, if people want to find out more about you, where should they go find out about your coaching, your Instagram, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, you could probably tell we got a lot of I've gotten a lot of requests recently regarding our one-on-one. And I work a full-time job separately. For like I'm a project manager and engineer. I work 40 hours a week doing that. And so I don't have any more time to take on personal programming people. Because when we do our personal coaching, it's like truly personalized. I write a different program for every person. Lauren does too, and we give them attention and time, and lots of texting and talking back and forth too. But just last week, just due to the increase in requests and stuff, we started something that we're going to call our guided pro track and our guided daily dose, where we give people personal attention while they're on the pro track or our daily tracks, and that's with a 30-minute phone consultation every other week. And we just help them adjust the daily tracks to their needs and the equipment that they have available. Plus, we offer like our strategy calls and additional scaling recommendations and substitutions and how to adjust the program around their own events and their own life events as well. Our website is thehybridengine.com. So that's thehybridengine.com. Or you can find us on Instagram at the Hybrid Engine, or you can navigate to Lauren's page, which is on Instagram at Lauren_E_weeks, or my Instagram is at a wild Peressini, which is my last name. And so that's all spelled AWILDPERESSINI. Or you could email us. I got contacts on our website too, but my email is thehybridengine@gmail.com. And for Lauren, it's thehybridengine.lauren@gmail.com. So
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thank you. Are you racing any Hyrox?
So my personal training, I always have to have a goal, like a focus. And since this last marathon and bench press, my next my next goal is actually this weekend. We're going to go to DecaFit and I'm going to race the co-ed team. Uh, it'll be good. Me and Lauren, finally get to partner up with her. Maybe I'm almost fit enough to be there with her. And we're racing two really good other teams though, including the world champs from the world champ team from this last year, and then Vivian and Isaac Sanderson, who are both world-class athletes. So it'll be a good team race in Anaheim this weekend. After that, I'll probably set my sights on like a fall or winter Hyrox. I'm waiting, just like everyone else, I'm waiting for Hyrox America to release their schedule and where they're going to be at. I've gotten a little bit of inside information on like some of the cities they might be going to and some newer ones, but I don't think those are coming until next spring. So I'd really like to find something that's in the fall, which is probably just going to be one of the normal either LA, Chicago, or New York races, maybe
Okay.
Dallas. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Brilliant. Well, yeah. Thank you for this. It's been fantastic. Good luck for the weekend, and I'll see you in Nice.
I won't be there. You'll see Lauren.
Okay.
I wish. I wish it's just not in the cards this year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.